Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hot Seat with One Woman Shop. We are Sara and Cristina, and if you're not familiar, One Woman Shop is a resource hub and membership community for female solo business owners. And we actually just celebrated our third anniversary, which is awesome because this also happens to be the third time we're celebrating Location Independence Month, which has evolved from Location Independence Week to month. But yeah, so obviously we're going to be talking location independence, but I'll let Cristina intro our topic today.
Yeah, so crazy to think about with where we were 3 years ago. We hadn't met, then we met on Twitter. I was just telling someone the story the other day, and they were like, "You haven't met? That's crazy." So it's been an eventful 3 years, to say the least. One of the reasons that we do location independence is because we both are location independent in our own very, very different ways. So I would say I'm a more stereotypical digital nomad in the sense that I decided to go to Central America. Although I hear that Rochester is now making it up on the list of best spots for digital nomads. So.
And I didn't do that. So.
So today we're doing Mythbusters. So basically, I think we hear a lot of different myths about location independence. I think they come from all sides, from people who are living the digital nomad life, who still have maybe they're new to it and have these expectations. And then there's people who are like, that's incredible, that's the most amazing thing ever. And other people are like, I would never do that, I could never do that. So lots of mixed opinions. What are some other things that you hear from different sides?
Yeah, well, I think there's a kind of a general misunderstanding of what location independence means. And we've talked a little bit about that before, but we'll get into kind of the different definitions and how that can actually stop people from discovering or exploring location independence versus digital nomadry. But yeah, I think that in general, there's just the misconceptions and how we each define them is what is the basis for most of the myths. But I think we all know the generalization that, you think location independence and digital nomad, you think Corona on a beach in a really comfy chair with your laptop on your lap, just being uber productive, right? So yeah, I think it's exciting to kind of dispel some of this stuff.
So that's only, I would say, probably 75% of the days for me.
Oh yeah.
Drinking, and then by 12 I have to take a nap. So.
The other 25% is a margarita instead of a Corona.
Exactly right. But I think it's really funny because I definitely see this in my own life. I live in Guatemala and Antigua, and I'm about 2 hours from the beach. And still, I've been here over a year and a half. And when I go to North Carolina, people are like, wait, you don't live at the beach? And I'm like, no, been to the beach one time in the past year and a half. And so I just think it's funny because that really is it's the image that everyone has. And I think probably if you Google image digital nomad, that's probably going to be the image that pops up. And so we always love to say it's not one size fits all. And so that's an example. You don't have to go to a beach. If you don't like the beach, that's okay. You can still be a digital nomad. You can still be location independent.
Yeah. So if we briefly just kind of go over exactly what we mean when we say location independent, is literally just that you have the possibility and the ability to work from anywhere. So if you're an online business owner and you can literally take your laptop and find a place with Wi-Fi, doesn't matter where in the world, then you are location independent. Digital nomadry, on the other hand, is a little bit more like what Cristina has done, is doing traveling around a bit more and really kind of uprooting most of your life to travel around the world and working while you do it. So that's kind of how we define it. And I think different people would define it different ways, but when we're using location independent versus digital nomad, that's what we mean.
I think it's funny because we still 3 years later debate this, and we're like, wait, okay. And also, as you know, I'm working on this little Instagram project, and so it's called Digital Nomad Baton, and I call it Digital Nomad, not like location independent baton. So people are like, and doing the email outreach, people are like, well, I'm in my home state. Can I carry the baton? And I'm like, I don't know. For you, technically, if you're going back and forth, that's one of your moves. So yeah, I think we're still deciding on stuff too.
Yeah. For the purposes of this conversation, though, we'll keep that combined.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would say that one thing that comes up a lot is, and again, I think you hear stuff on either side of this, is that you are going to be living the same, as a digital nomad, you would be living the same life as a traveler. And I would say, myth busted. That is not true. So in my experience, I'll just speak from my experience. So people are like, and then on the flip side, people are like, well, you don't see any of the culture, so what's the point? You may as well be in the cubicle. And I'm like, that's also a really strange opinion in my mind, because I'm like, there's still, basically, if I go to a coffee shop, I can be in a coffee shop in North Carolina, or I can be in a coffee shop in Antigua speaking Spanish and learning about the local politics and culture. So to me, it's still a very different experience. But
yeah, you're still immersed in the culture.
Right. Exactly. But you are still spending a ton of hours in front of a screen. And so,
yeah, so that kind of leads right into a different myth. I feel like now we have to do that busted every time. But this I experienced personally when I was taking some work on the road when my husband and I were in New Zealand and Australia. We were gone for 35 days, so it was really tough to just kind of say, I'm not going to work at all, even though it was predominantly a vacation. But I did find that I think one of the myths is that once you get set up somewhere, you can just have a regular working life. And while you're not a full-time traveler, I also found that it was very hard to be as productive as I was. And I think in my case, it was because I was kind of haphazardly approaching it like, okay, I'm going to spend this one day working. Whereas if you're there for a bit longer, you can settle into more of a routine. We have a really great post on that. And it is important to settle into that routine, but it's not going to happen right away. And it's not going to happen as naturally if you're only in places for a shorter amount of time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Gosh, I'm like trying to think of all the other myths that I hear. Yeah, do you have any that jump out at you?
Yeah, the other thing I would say is I think people just kind of assume that certain places are better for productivity and Wi-Fi. And I think we've both learned that Wi-Fi is actually hard to come by in places where you least expect that to be. So I encounter that even just exploring my location independence here in Rochester when I travel from coffee shop to coffee shop, and I'm like, where am I right now that I cannot connect to a strong Wi-Fi network? But then, you know, New Zealand is kind of notorious for really poor Wi-Fi. I didn't expect that. I expected, you know, New Zealand's not kind of, you know, it's not a third world country. It's not out of whatever. So I just kind of assumed they'd have a pretty strong Wi-Fi network. Myth busted. So really looking into kind of your options beforehand and being prepared to work without Wi-Fi.
Which of course we have posts on all of that. So we do have on our list of resources on the site, we have all these different sites that basically help you, like one's called Nomad List, and it lets you look at different locations and you can sort by different priorities. So you can actually sort by things like best cities for single women. Obviously, I'm looking real hard at that list. But you can also sort by things like Wi-Fi. And so definitely taking the time to prepare. But again, as you said, knowing that sometimes it's just unpredictable. So I was in North Carolina and my Wi-Fi went out for 10 minutes. And I was like, I told my client, I was like, believe it or not, not in Guatemala right now.
Right. Yeah. No, and I know we had a really great roundup post last year that we can I'll share in the chat here, but it's unexpected lessons learned from location independence. And one of our contributors, Kate from Adventurous Kate, actually said she had no idea how much of her day would be spent trying to find decent Wi-Fi. And she is also shocked by which countries have good and bad, where South Africa is awful, but many Eastern European countries have great Wi-Fi. So like I said, it's just, you just don't know really what to expect.
Yeah. So basically, in conclusion, the whole point of this lab is just go to all these awesome posts that are already on the site, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, actually, and we have a roundup of all those posts too. So, yeah. I'll put that link there. How about that? Let's do that. Make it easy.
I have to share a really quick story, though, about New Zealand. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So as a lot of you know, if you've listened in on Blabs, my roommate is from New Zealand, and people don't really know that much about New Zealand oftentimes, and I'm guilty. But people think that it's very, very undeveloped, and people will ask her dead seriously if there's cars, and she just like, I've joined in, so the two of us just like make up this whole story about how like there's cars, but they're more like Flintstone cars, so you have to like bicycle in order to get them started. And then we're just like, no, we're just messing with you, but it's a good time.
Yeah, no, that's hilarious. Should be one to talk because there are certain aspects of the world where I'm so uneducated.
Oh, exactly. People all the time think I'm South American. I'm like, no judgment, because I did not know a lot of things about a lot of other countries. So.
Yeah. Okay, so another myth is that, and we kind of touched on this, but that you have to go all in. It's all or nothing.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit more about what that could mean. So I know you've made notes about you have to sell everything. Is that necessarily true?
No, that is not true. So I think that, in my experience, I did it very gradually. So I put all my stuff in storage because I was expecting to take a 3-month trip. If I could have even had my lease continued, I could have even sublet my apartment for 3 months and not even had a storage unit. But in my case, my lease was ending, so I had a storage unit, and then actually have gone back multiple times to sell off my stuff, sold my car and sold all the stuff in my storage unit. But for me, I was not willing to sell all my stuff with the idea that I may or may not go to Central America, and I could have potentially hated it. And so definitely for me, easing in made it a lot less intimidating, a lot less stressful.
Yeah, I think some of the best advice I've heard when it comes to really making the most of being location independent is to experiment with it at the beginning. So take a weekend and book a hotel somewhere or set up a tent, whatever your choice of accommodation is, but try it for a few days or even a day-long escapade somewhere. And then you can kind of just keep building up. You don't necessarily have to say like, hey, I quit my 9 to 5 and now I'm location independent. I'm just going to sell all my crap and get out of here. So I think there are different ways to kind of experiment with it that can really break that myth of it's all or nothing.
Yeah. And I would say also though, to be careful, because let's say that you take a weekend and you go to a nearby city and you stay in a hotel, you're probably not going to have that much interaction. Like maybe you'll have interaction at coffee shops, but you're probably not going to have that much interaction. And so if one thing that you're really concerned about is feeling lonely, which was a huge thing for me, making sure that you remember that experience at a hotel, for example, is not necessarily the same experience you would get if you're living within a culture, or say you're staying at a hostel. So remembering that it's all gonna feel different no matter where you are and what living situation you're in.
That's really important. Yeah. Now, what would you say as somebody that did take their solo business and travel with it? What would you say to somebody who has just quit their job and now they are technically location independent? They could work from anywhere, and they're being told like, you should actually go on the road. You should take it and capitalize on that. You shouldn't be working from your living room. What would you tell them?
First of all, I would tell them, stop listening to everyone, because no one should be throwing all these shits at you. So I mean, I would say that I was technically location independent for at least a year and lived in Raleigh and really enjoyed it. And if I had gone to Central America based on other people's pressure, I probably wouldn't have been happy, because I don't think it would have been the right time for me. So first of all, I would say, because you can does not mean you have to. And then I would say, what else would I say? I guess I would say
it's some people more than other.
Yeah, I think, okay, here's a myth from the other side. I think that a lot of people who, let's say, have a mortgage think that digital nomads are like judging that. And I think probably a lot of people are judging that. They're judging like possessions, and they're judging. I do think that that's true. Judging possessions and judging a mortgage and judging stability. But like, I don't care. Like my sister, you saw this on my Facebook the other day, was joking that she was like, I'm a digital nomad. I work from my local coffee shop and the local bistro. And so like, that's our joke. Like she has a house and they have a really kind of stable life that really suits them in North Carolina. And like, I don't care. It's not for me, but that doesn't mean that I care or judge that. So there's a Mythbusters.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, I think that, because I'm very much a homebody, but travel is one of my absolute favorite things to do. But I appreciate travel because I know I have a home base, and I appreciate my home base because I know I can travel. So I kind of like to toe that line of how often can I really capitalize on taking my work on the road. But I don't think it would be for me permanently. You know, especially there are obviously the lifestyle choices we make. I'm married, I have a mortgage, I have XYZ. But I do think that even if you don't have anything that's necessarily holding you back, like most people would, the stereotypical things people would think of, it still might not be for you. You might not be the type of person that needs to be in a different location every week just to get inspiration, or you might not want to be the person that's constantly exploring new cultures. It might be exhausting to you. So I think that it's just, it's truly, truly, truly something that is individual in nature.
Yeah, absolutely. But I do think if there's like a little part in your brain, so people will sometimes message me on Facebook and be like, tell me more about this. And I think that when people ask, I always follow up. I'm like, are you interested because you think it's interesting that I'm doing it? Or are you interested because you're actually secretly interested in it? And so I think that if there's kind of a little piece in your brain that's like, then definitely explore that. And so don't, on the flip side, don't be afraid to say, no, it's not for me, but don't be afraid to experiment with it, because I had to talk to my friends and family, and like they weren't telling me like you should go, but they were like, we can tell that you want to go and that fear is holding you back. And so then that kind of opened it up for me. And I was like, okay, if literally everyone in my life is saying that they think that I want to go, I probably want to go. So
yeah, and I think it's, even when you're having those thoughts of like, oh, you know, I'm really jealous of Christina's life, and looking at, you know, is it because it looks glamorous, or is it because I really do wish that I was in her shoes doing XYZ? Just think about kind of what would be different in your life, and those are changes that you really want to make. The other thing I would want to just touch on is the expectations around traveling with a partner and trying to work. So this is a big one for me, because I often say to my husband, man, I really wish you were running a solo business so that when we travel, you understand when I want to work and you have work to do too. He cannot take his work on the road, and he's very, very diligent in not taking his work on the road, even in the aspects that he can. So definitely considering that a vacation is not necessarily a digital nomad experience, because you cannot, unless you are on the absolute same page as the people that you're traveling with, you just simply can't set up your work just like you would at home. And even being, you know, married to somebody who completely understands what I do and how I like to work, it's still a struggle when we go somewhere. I have to be very clear about, you know, I intend to work for 4 hours, 3 mornings of the trip, or whatever it is. But when it comes to bringing other people into the equation, I think it does get a little bit harder.
Definitely. And so you basically alluded to the whole setting expectations, which we talked about from Rising Strong. But I've had that too with my mom, where I'm like, that I told you I needed to work. And like, well, maybe you didn't tell me how many hours. So I could be like, I wanted to work 6 hours and she's here 2 hours. And so basically being very, very vocal about those expectations that you both have, for sure.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I would say that, so kind of back to your question of what I would tell someone is, in my experience, you are going to have to make sacrifices. And so, like I said, like there's going to be days, like I've actually wrote a post about this on my little blog that I don't do anymore, about there are going to be days when, let's say you're staying at a hostel and every single friend that you meet at the hostel is going to a certain place. And there are going to be days where you're like, you know what, life is really short, I need to say yes. And then there are going to be days where you're like, life is really short and I also need to pay the bills in that life. And so I really, really need to say no. And then you can also get creative. So like I gave an example in this blog post where I met this like awesome group when I first started traveling, and everyone was going to this hostel on this Laguna. And so I called, I checked that there was Wi-Fi, and I ended up working for a few hours in the restaurant at the hostel and then going down and joining everyone. So that to me was like a perfect, I get to say yes to this really cool opportunity, but I also get to pay the bills and move the business forward. So
yeah. No, for sure. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think it's like it's that whole debate of like, can you have it all as a woman or as a person or as a digital nomad? I don't know. To me, it's about trade-offs. So yes, you kind of can have it all, but I think you can have it all, but not every single minute of every day.
Yeah, no, and I think it's really, I don't know if looking back at this conversation, it might seem like we're kind of overall dispelling the myth that location independence is easy, by kind of pointing out that there are some things that you don't expect. But just as we would say it's not easy, it's also not, it doesn't have to be as hard as you think it might be. So yeah, I just think that it's really about knowing exactly what you want out of it and then going after that and understanding that there's trade-offs.
Or not knowing. I think knowing some aspects of what you want, but I think knowing like I want to push my business forward while I'm traveling, I think that's important to know. But I think about some of the stuff that like I made a bucket list of what I was going to do in Central America, and I looked back on it and I was like, I've done legitimately nothing on this list. And so also being open. It's always about.
Yeah, and definitely what I meant by that is know your why. So why are you doing this? Not necessarily I'm going to go to Guatemala and I'm going to do these 10 things, but kind of knowing, exactly why you want to try it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that when I talk about it, I try to strike a balance between being like, no, it's not all fun and games and it's not all easy and it's not like all beautiful Instagram pictures. And then at the same time, I feel like you probably can vouch for this, that like best decision I've ever made in my entire life, hands down. And like, I don't know if it's as visible as I feel like it is, but I just feel like I'm a much happier person. And so I don't know, I try to kind of give both of those sides, but to me it's been the best decision ever.
For sure. Okay, so we have a lot of, do you have any other myths you want to bust today?
Oh yes, I'm going to affirm the myth that it is totally worth buying packing cubes. That's the only thing I have to say about that. They're the greatest purchase I've ever made in terms of packing. So I don't know, what did they say on Mythbusters when it's like, when a myth is true? Then it's not a myth.
Can I be honest and say I've never actually watched Mythbusters?
You have a homework assignment, Missy. So good. It's so good. It's like science experiments. You and Pete would love it.
Totally.
New show. Okay. Well, anyway, packing cubes is worth the investment. Myth not bust.
Good to know. Good to know. Is that on our digital nomad resource list?
There is a company on there, Tom Bin, and so they have some packing cubes. You can also go to Amazon.com and type in packing cubes because that works really well.
Awesome. Well, if you want any more information on location independence, head over to onewomanshop.com. The blog is all about location independence this month, and you can actually follow some digital nomads around the world on our Instagram account because we are passing the Instagram baton amongst digital nomads all month, which is really exciting.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for joining us, guys. See ya.
Have a good one.